People don't like being told things suck. So
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, TV shows, music, video games, foodstuffs, and more from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Aaron Dicer.
I admire you, Colonel. I do.
Thank you, sir.
Most men your age would have retired by now. It's okay. We need general officers with maturity and character like you. We've got good sergeants, we've got good lieutenant colonels. Once a man gets those eagles, oh, he can't wait to get that star, Kenny. He becomes a politician, right? Goes along to get along. So goddamn hard to stay upright.
hello, everybody. It is episode 121 of Recotopia. Today's big recommend is The Thin Red Line. Continuing a series, Aaron has glommed on to the series of movies that he's been recommended but did not like, but is giving another chance, and we are talking about that movie today. I'm Chris Atkinson, joined by Aaron Dicer.
Hi-do-lee-ho, Linerinos.
That's right. And chat here in force today to watch us talk about movies. Very happy to have you guys here, even if you may not like this movie. But I am very, very excited to talk about The Thin Red Line later on in the program. Did it turn Aaron around? Stay tuned. Do you happen to have any small recommends, Aaron?
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
I do. Before I get there, I will just say Thinerinos was right there, and I went with Linerinos for some reason. I have no idea why that happens sometimes. My first small recommend is a documentary called Girls State. This is a follow-up to the Boys State documentary. Both of them follow this program that is done by the American Legion, I believe, in all 50 states, where younger students, come together to pretend to be the government, I guess is the succinct way of saying it. So they'll elect like a Supreme Court, a governor of the state. They'll go through with some of the processes of, doing legislation, court cases. The Supreme Court will do a ruling on something. And it's just a way for them to engage in the idea of civic duty and politics and those kind of things. And it's really interesting because most of the people that attend this are very activated by the political idea, right? And so you've got people who think maybe this political science is a career they want to do or whatever. I highly recommend watching both of these documentaries because it's really interesting how Boys State is different from Girls State. And specifically this one, I really enjoyed watching these young women who believe different things from each other in an extremely polarized society have actual conversations and dialogue about their beliefs. It gave me hope for the future that possibly we could have an operational legislative body at some point. But that may just be my pie in the sky optimism speaking. But there's some very interesting discussions of, political hot button topics. That's interesting to watch not only these young women discover the politics of it all, but also the self-discovery that's going on, the understanding of how it shapes you when you start to verbalize your beliefs to other people and how we shape each other. And I really found this documentary fascinating. It's a big recommend. I think Apple TV Plus has them both. Boys State and Girls State.
That's called Boys State. I did not know they made a Girl State. So did this come out this year?
Yes, this just came out a few weeks ago.
Was Boys State, was it an Oscar nominee? I can't remember.
Ooh, I don't remember if it got nominated for Best Doc that year. It wouldn't surprise me. It's a great documentary, but
I enjoyed it. But I'm wondering, like, a lot of times what drew me to that movie, like usually it's not like, oh, I want to watch a documentary about this. So I don't know, maybe I was intrigued enough to watch it without Oscar nominations being involved. But anyway, I went again. God, I think I've recommended so many John Carpenter movies over this podcast, but I'm going to do another one here, and it's Escape from New York. Uh, God, there's just something very simple and very comforting about a movie like this. I can't explain it. It's very simple and very like direct to the point. Whatever it's about this thing that happens to Air Force One. President Donald Pleasance is on the plane. He's got this suitcase that's got a tape on it, and he before the plane crashes, he jumps out into Manhattan, which is a prison now. It's like it's the far off year of 1997, and he has gone in Manhattan. Like there's so much crime going on. They had to make Manhattan a whole prison. They don't guard the prison. People can just live their lives in Manhattan in the prison and everything. Anyway, Donald Pleasance jumps out of the Air Force One, and there's some bad guys that get a hold of him, and they want something. We don't know exactly what. And so, meanwhile, the police state that is outside wants to get the president and want to make sure that they get the tape, because in 24 hours he doesn't deliver that tape to China and Russia. Who knows what might happen? And so they go out and they get the president, but the bad guys don't want to talk to the police, and so they have to do something sneaky. They have to get somebody who's got some rep, got a little edge to him that's not a cop. And they get Kurt Russell. Snake Plissken is his name. Don't call him Plissken. Call him Snake. That's what he keeps. That's all he asked for. And then so they drop him down. They take a glider, and he lands on the World Trade Center. And he goes down, and he starts going through the neighborhood, and he has to ask all these people where the hell the president is. And ultimately ends up the main bad guy of this movie is the Duke of New York, played by Isaac Hayes. There's a cab driver that Ernest Borgnine plays in this. But it's just a nice little action film, post-apocalyptic sci-fi type of thing and Kurt Russell has this little wristband that if he doesn't get the president back in 24 hours, then these capsules in his neck explode and all this good stuff. It's just such fine that only John Carpenter can deliver. Plus, John Carpenter's trademark score all the way throughout it as well. This is just a joy.
Some might be surprised to hear me say I actually really like this movie. And I think it's because I very quickly tuned into the first time I watched this wasn't too long ago. It was kind of as I was doing my catch up on some movies within the last few years. This is a satire, and as soon as I locked into the satirical edge that this is bringing, there's a self-awareness to it that you don't have to forgive the silliness, because the silliness is kind of the feature, right? It's saying some things. And I mean, the central performance, the Plissken performance is so good and so fun. So yeah, this is a good watch and an interesting movie to boot. So yeah, I enjoy Escape from New York.
Yeah, and also got to mention Adrienne Barbeau, and I've got to also mention Lee Van Cleef in this, who when I watched Escape from New York for the first time, did not know who that gentleman was, and since then I have seen Lee Van Cleef in a whole bunch of stuff, and he is great in this too. Just a bevy of great little acting performances and just fun stuff in it. Anyway, there you go.
My second recommend this week is I've been trying to hit all the De Palma movies I haven't seen. I was very short on my De Palma knowledge. Not anymore. I've gone through most of them, but I managed to get to the early 2000s and Femme Fatale. This stars Rebecca Romijn and Antonio Banderas. I actually really liked this movie, which again is why I'm putting it in a small recommend. I think the movie has some De Palma clearly wears his Hitchcock on his sleeve. So, there's definitely a lot of similar tension building and tone that you would see in a Hitchcock film, which is always going to be pleasing to me. I'm always going to enjoy that. And then the movie also is going to have some really interesting filming choices, which is another, thing that Hitchcock liked to do. But I think De Palma likes it even more. He really likes to get creative with these shots. There's a split screen shot in this that just kind of blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. Where the split screen is the same at the beginning, but it's two different cameras, and one of them then moves slowly back, and then looks at the geography of the surrounding area, while the other one just stays locked off on Antonio Banderas. So it's kind of this interesting 2-minute oneer that is like two oneers at the same time that start with the same image. Like, that's kind of brilliant. That's pretty amazing stuff. So they're always going to be interesting and fun to watch. But I also found the things that this movie was doing with ideas of identity and ideas of choices. Well, anything I could say on this level is probably a little too much spoiler, and so I don't want to give away kind of where this movie goes. But I really loved where this movie finished, and kind of the fun. There's a very intricate finish to this movie that takes a lot of what we've seen in the movie and puts it back into a place where it just makes sense. And I know I'm talking around it, but it's because I don't want to give away the ending. But I actually really enjoyed Femme Fatale. I think it's a good flick.
I saw this long ago when I was working at Hollywood 27, and I remember being somewhat excited for it, and then I watched it and I hated it. So I have not revisited Femme Fatale since I watched it way back when. So I couldn't tell you if I was just in a bad mood that day. I can tell you there were a lot of movies I watched as a projectionist that I hated because of what was going on with me at the time. So, you watch some movies later on, you're like, what was I thinking during that?
Right.
But anyway, maybe I need to give this a rewatch, because I have heard this has kind of built up a cult following over the years.
Yeah, I think it's also an interesting Banderas performance too, because usually Antonio has become this very forward sex symbol, and in this one he's a little bit like withdrawn and restrained, and he's like the one that's being played. So it's a different kind of role than I've really seen him in. So it's fun stuff.
Someone mentioning Lady in the Water in the chat. That's someone who has been following us for years, because I believe that was something that I answered. Like, I liked Lady in the Water because I was watching it as a projectionist, and it was like the coolest, most serene time watching that movie. And I was like, this is good. And then I watched it again, and I was like, oh yeah, now I realize why everybody hates this.
Yeah.
Although, do you like Lady in the Water?
I kind of love that movie. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I can see why, though. I mean, obviously, I actually counted myself as someone who liked this movie at one time.
Yeah.
So, my other small recommend comes from 1998. It is also an anti-war film. That's what we're about to get into, and the big recommend as well. But 1998, Small Soldiers, Joe Dante making a movie that, it's about toys, and it's about toys that go to war with each other. Imagine if you had a toy company that needed to get that next big thing, and you hired Jay Moore and David Cross to try to come up with the perfect toy. And Jay Moore goes, and apparently this is such a huge corporation that he can go into the company bank account and buy 500,000 like military grade microchips to put in the action figures to make them more lifelike. And so they build these toys that are just it's just soldiers versus these creatures called the Gorgonites. And that's the basic thin bare bones premise of what they are. There's a toy store that this kid is running for his dad, played by Kevin Dunn, that doesn't sell anything. They don't have the cool toys or anything, but a toy delivery truck goes by, and he's giving the kid all these toys and stuff that they usually get, and he sees on the back of the truck these soldiers that they've just created, this toy company's just made, that's going to go to some other toy company. But is it, hey, you could just kind of give me one of those little shipments there and then pretend like it fell off the truck or something. I'll pay you back once we sell the toys. So he does that in his dad's absence. He buys a whole bunch of toys that they would never sell in their lives. And so these toys, once they activate in such a way that once they're alive or whatever, they can do pretty much anything. They can walk anywhere, they can talk anywhere. They've got this microchip that's basically a learning AI that just kind of like just keeps learning stuff. Of course, the soldiers, they all they know is like to kill Gorgonites. That's all they care about. That's all they really want to do the entire time. One of the toys is voiced by Tommy Lee Jones. Ernest Borgnine shows back up in this one too. That was a happy accident. There was a whole the whole Spinal Tap crew is a voice of of soldiers in this. Anyway, the toys get out in the middle of the night and they go to war on the Gorgonites and the whole neighbor. It's like Joe Dante doing Gremlins again, only with soldiers and aliens and things like that. Kirsten Dunst is in this, playing sort of the love interest of the little kid in this. There's a lot of like really good voice talent in this. And then Phil Hartman, probably I think it was his last movie he ever got to do, and he got murdered 6 weeks before this movie came out. And they inserted a for Phil at the end of this movie. But it's really just it's one of those movies that I think could have done maybe perhaps more with its premise. It's like I said, it's kind of doing more Gremlin stuff than the real anti-war message that it's trying to do, and it's just trying to be funny in a lot of moments. But I really enjoy this. It's been a long time since I had seen it, so I gave it a rewatch, and I recommend this one.
Yeah, it has been a long time since I have seen this. I did not like it the first time I saw it for whatever reason. Like you said, maybe it was just having a bad day or whatever. I owe this one a rewatch because you're not the only one who has told me that this movie is actually a lot of fun and really good. So, and I don't remember much about it other than the premise. So it could have been a little bit of like, how dare you stomp on Toy Story's, turf, kind of thing going on in my brain. You never know, like how those biases impact us, but I owe it a rewatch for sure.
And one guy that I didn't mention that really kind of sells this movie for me is Frank Langella's voice of the main Gorgonite. He really, really adds a lot to that character, and you really feel sympathy for him. I like the fact that the movie gives this bare bones animosity between the American soldiers, the GI Joes or whatever of the group, and these aliens. There's really no reason to hate them, but it really has a lot of real world connotations in it as well. And why are they even fighting? They even have the "what is it good for?" that comes up in the movie
right.
too. But anyway, well worth the watch if you haven't seen it. It's I think like a lot of satire, it was marketed in a certain way and it just didn't get an audience. I don't think satire in general can get, even if you advertise it perfectly correctly, you're not going to get much of an audience. People don't like being told things suck. So, so there you go.
That's fair.
On to our big recommend, which is The Thin Red Line. This is Aaron's pick. So take it away, Aaron.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
Will do. The Thin Red Line is a 1998 Terrence Malick film starring all of the people that is entirely about a battle in World War II without likely being at all about a battle in World War II. We begin with an alligator slipping into the swamp and some narration about the power of nature because Malick's got a Malick. We then join a local indigenous tribe as Jesus Christ rows through them to shore. As he creepily watches mothers bathe their children, he narrates a story about death and loss and fear and wondering if he could die with the same calm as his mom. It's clear Private Witt is trying to integrate himself with the locals, and we see him enjoying some beach singing, some beach tree climbing, and some beach spotting of a warship. That last one is not so welcome as he and his army buddy run and hide. Cut to Spicoli, who is apparently his superior in the army, threatening him with all sorts of jobs if he doesn't straighten up and stop living with his head in the clouds in fantasy worlds with rock biters and luck dragons and I may be confusing this with a different movie. Later in Lockdown, he looks closely at the floor pattern, wastes some matches, and remembers hay bales. Cut to John Travolta and Nick Nolte discussing the difficulties of military voyeurism and leading a battleship to stop the Japanese from invading the South Pacific. Occasionally, Nolte will narrate some stuff about his deeper emotional attachment to his work in the armed forces, as the movie becomes specifically interested in the smoking of cigarettes and pacing around the deck of a ship. Underneath the deck, the Charlie Company soldiers talk about their fears as we meet Private Train, Adrian Brody, John C. Reilly, and Tim Blake Nelson. The last two of which are both trying to sleep with Jennifer Aniston, who would rather have an affair with Jake Gyllenhaal. And then Tim Blake shows his full Nelson, and I may be confusing this with a different movie.
True.
After some more ominous foreboding, score, and imagery, the boys load up the boats to take the beach, and where we eventually get to after watching the boats go there from the battleship in real time. But they might as well have found Kenneth, Keanu, Denzel, Emma, Robert Sean Leonard, and Michael Keaton on that beach, because the whole landing was much ado about nothing. Malick takes the opportunity to squeeze in some more nature porn and poetic narration as we get some absolutely stunning shots of the boys continuing to make their way inland. As we get some more introspective narration from Jim Caviezel over shots of the brutalities of those injuries and battles that we haven't seen, I'm left to wonder if we're ever going to see any actual red lines so that we can see how thin they really are. Next up, our crew, which now includes Jared Leto and Woody Harrelson, are being told about having to climb a hill, so Malick shows us what the POV might look like on that if they did it really slowly. The next day, we get full shots of the hill taking many explosions before it's time to advance. And one soldier calls in a last-second sick day despite Woody's protest. And then the battle begins in earnest. We feel the insanity, confusion, and desperation of the situation as people die, blood splatters, and a bird struggles to crawl out from beneath a tree. The battle then gets even more personal as the guys get closer and closer to the Japanese forces, and Woody Harrelson accidentally grabs a grenade by the pin, a mistake that costs him his life. We continue to see more moments of war being war, with questions about triage, chain of command, and how Sean Penn's character dodged all of those bullets. Next up, it's Nick Nolte playing Backhill Driver as he yells for a frontal attack that the commander on site says is suicide, and he disobeys that direct order to keep his men from dying pointlessly. Once Nolte arrives, he makes sure the soldiers are wearing their blouses, not aiming their guns, and that John Cusack comes along with him. And just like every time you call IT to figure out a computer problem, once they arrive, the situation has apparently just fixed itself. After some slow-motion flashbacks of life back home, we get an inspirational strategy speech from Nolte about what it will take to take this ridge, and an inspirational speech from Penn to Caviezel about what is worth fighting for, before we spend about 20 seconds watching dogs scavenge human remains, and one soldier is losing his mind from survivor's guilt, and then, of course, some more slow-motion flashbacks of life back home with them saying, "Hey, baby, want to flow together like water tonight?" to their significant others. John Cusack sneaks up the hill with some of the crew to call in some coordinates to take out the enemy stronghold. And in what might be the most intense and well-choreographed war action of the movie, we see everything it takes to capture those final few feet of land. It all makes for what would be an incredible ending to the film about an hour and a half before the movie actually ends. Cusack and Nolte take the next steps and how unimportant water is to human survival before continuing up the next hill, but not before we get Adrian Brody narrating about there not being much difference between seeing dead dogs and seeing dead people. And while I actually agree, I don't think he means it exactly like I would mean it. The next battle is much more hand-to-hand combat, and through some quick cuts and handheld shaky cam, we get a sense for how treacherous it must be to decide who is danger and who is surrendering, and the Hans Zimmer score swells perfectly to capture the mood and the moment. Until it's broken by some more ponderous interior monologuing about the seed and root of evil, and are we sure every single soldier is this versed in such linguistically resplendent prose? I'm not. After some waterfall bathing and memories of the indigenous singing, Nolte sits down to relieve the commander who wouldn't storm the hill, but tells him in return for keeping it quiet and heading home, he'll throw in a purple star for his trouble. It all makes for what would be an incredible ending to this film about an hour before the movie actually ends. The officer tells his soldiers that they are his sons and they live inside him now, which sounds much more creepy when I say it. The soldiers continue to reconcile in different ways with what they've done as the rain pours down, and one of them tears off his shirt and raises both hands to the sky as Morgan Freeman narrates everything they crawled through to find freedom. And I may be confusing this with a different movie. After some more narration and another gator sighting, Jack gets a letter from his wife back home that she's fallen in love with an Air Force captain and wants a divorce, and that she no longer wants to flow together like water with him. JC makes some more local friends, ponders some more of the deep complexities of post-war life, and slowly walks through camp so we can make sure we see him shaking hands with every single member of his camp. He then has another conversation with Penn about their different worldviews, so the movie can make another point about how different people deal with war in different ways. And in case we didn't get it, someone pops in to narrate the exact same thing. Cut to the company being pinned down in a river and the ineffective new command stupidly sending out some scouts when you know the guy that got demoted would have protected his men better. Choices and consequences, you see. Speaking of which, Private Whip makes the choice to go on this scouting mission and manages to save the day by leading the Japanese forces away and sacrificing himself. It all makes for what would be a great ending to the film that has decided it can't end before sneaking in a George Clooney cameo where he asks his cadets to call him daddy while Sean Penn narrates some more. And oh, hey, look, Tim Blake Nelson's still alive. The movie finally ends in just the way the good Lord Malik intended, with some dense but certainly meaningful narration, a few more shots of nature to meet his quota, and still leaving us wondering if we're ever going to see any actual thin lines so we can see how red they really are. And that is the thin red line, or at least as best as I could explain it. Chris, what are your thoughts watching it this time?
I love this movie. I really do. The first time I watched it, I liked it. On the second viewing, I love this movie, and I know that's going to be unpopular with the chat because they've been dogging this movie since the beginning. And I'm going to tell you, I put the blame on you, the viewers. No, I do really think this is kind of this is going to sound condescending. This is a cinema nerd movie, and I know that even a cinema nerd may not like this movie, but it's one of those to me that it does deserve its length. I understand that the real climax of this movie happens in the middle of it, and that there's a whole bunch of stuff afterwards, but it has a lot of things that it's saying, and maybe it says it more than once. But I do love this entire arc with Sean Penn and Jim Caviezel during it. Sean Penn is he's so out of it. He's like, I don't have any hope for this type of thing. And he's like, what can one man make it? His whole thing is, how can one man make a difference? And we see him constantly sort of defending humanity. Like, Caviezel should definitely be like court-martialed and sent to jail and all that for what he's done. But Sean Penn goes in and says, "Know what? I believe in humanity. I want him to come back, and he may not be a soldier, but he's going to help us out one way or the other. I know that there's something in him that works, and we don't know what that is yet. But then by the end of it, of course, not that it's surprising, Caviezel does become that one man by the end of the movie that does make a difference when he leads those Japanese soldiers away from that just helpless group in the river and everything. So yeah, this is one of those, this is one of these movies that I just think is beautiful to look at. The John Tall cinematography. John Tall used to be like, I don't know if he's still like going or whatever. I don't know if I hope he hasn't died or something like that, but he used to be like the go-to cinematographer. He won like 2 in a row, I think, at one point. Like, it was Braveheart,
94 and 95.
Yeah. And he's great. The Hans Zimmer score is great. That Hans Zimmer score later pops up, I remember, in the Pearl Harbor trailer when the bomb is going down into the ship and everything. I remember that music. But the Hans Zimmer score is fantastic in this. Going over some of the notes, I love the prevalence of fear, the fear of death in the first 30 minutes. Everybody's pondering death. You have Wit, who is AWOL. You have the soldier it's Train, I believe, telling Welsh how scared he is. And then you have Bell, played by Ben Chaplin, who doesn't seem to fear death because he's got Miranda Otto back home. And that he even, I think it's telling that he goes out onto the ship without his helmet at the beginning. And he's like, put your helmet on. And he's like, he's actually not, he's scared, but he's not that scared because he believes that she's going to be waiting for him on the other side when he dies. He's going to be waiting for her after death. And that's what makes it so tough. This whole movie, he's been talking about, like, he's going through all these memories of all this, like this loving relationship, all these times they had together and everything. And by the end of it, she sent a note to him saying, nah, I'm done. I'm marrying an Air Force captain and everything. So, I thought that was just devastating. The movie shows us subtly that the fight over this island is between the Japanese, who do not own it, and the Americans, who do not own it. There are native people here, along with all the animals in nature, who call this place home and have no stake in the war, except that they now must live with hell on earth as two strangers fight over the possession of what is actually theirs. And that's something that the movie very subtly hints at throughout this. I love that shot of the hill when they're about to go up it. It's a, yes, we can enjoy the pretty grass, but it also, the low angle shot sort of serves to show how daunting this hill is. And I love how he films that throughout. There's a point where Penn's really tired of all this stuff, and he says, this is all about property. I think it's clear that Nolte looks at soldiers like pawns and easily disposable. He's doing the thing, the Longshanks thing in Braveheart, where he's like, send your men in full attack. And they're like, yeah, won't we hit our men with our stuff, with our arrows, if we send our men in? Yes, but we'll hit theirs as well, and all that type of thing. And he's like, just send in a whole bunch of numbers. Eventually they'll all get mowed down, and then we still have an army, and we'll still be able to take the hill. Nolte's drive in this, man, is such a scary thing to behold, and someone who's been constantly shit on throughout the entire process of promotions and things like that. And because of that tiny detail, not tiny, he is now willing to kill hundreds of people because of promotions, because he's been passed over. This movie is like, movie's anti-war message is pretty clear throughout. I love how they do that, how he does that, the nature of it all, how pretty the nature is. And of course, we're upsetting it with bombs and bullets and death and things of that. I love also a lot of the narration, the appeal to faith and nature. Sometimes faith and nature are intertwined. There's a point where I believe it's the Elias Koteas character is praying. He's looking up, or we're looking up during his prayer, and we see the nature, and it could be God, it could be nature that he's appealing to. I think the movie sort of leaves it up to you to figure out which one he's doing. I also think that there's the thing with the characters between Nolte and Koteas. I think that's a very interesting dynamic. Nolte just looks at him like a lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's not really a soldier. He sees him as a lawyer the entire time. And he's even a little intimidated at the intelligence of Elias Koteas throughout this whole thing. There's a point where Nolte brings up the Iliad, and we had to read that in Greek at West Point and all this stuff. So, hey, I know Greek too. I know the Iliad too. It's kind of has that Crimson Tide feel to it, where Gene Hackman is he's the crusty guy, like, just go out there and kill. While Denzel Washington's the guy like, hold on a minute. Why are we doing this type of thing? Why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. Why should I just follow orders blindly? That doesn't make any sense. I think you mentioned that the taking of the bunker part is amazing. That scene is ridiculously good. Also, once they've gone through the final Japanese forces, they go through that village, and there's all the injured people and everything like that. There's a lot of pondering on where evil comes from. And is everybody evil? Does everybody have that evil inside them? And the fact that the soldiers on the battlefield are strangers means I can take out your humanity. And then the John C. Reilly part where he finally gets to speak in this movie, he doesn't feel anything anymore. War reduces you to kill or be killed and to lose part of your humanity, because the unfairness of war means everything you care about can be wiped out in an instant. And then our defense mechanisms kick in. And yeah, going over the bell, how war, he says, war can't kill this love. War can't kill this. Where did this war come from? Where did the love come from? All I know is that you can't kill the love. And then guess what?
Guess what?
War killed the love. And I love the ultimate character arc of Caviezel's character. Now, if there's a criticism of this movie, it feels like Caviezel's character is the only one that really has an arc. Penn has a bit of an arc in this movie. A lot of guys come and go in this movie. I think that is distracting, that they keep putting recognizable faces casually into that. I know that they're like, oh, they're just normal guys. I'm sorry. It's John Cusack. It's Woody Harrelson. It's Jared fucking Leto going through all of this. It's really hard to get that out of my mind. And then, yeah, of course, the Clooney cameo at the end, where Clooney's clearly still off of ER and doing his Clooney shtick during that whole thing is funny. But yeah, a lot of the thing that it kills me about this is that Brody's character, Fife, is the main character in the book, and they cut him completely out of it, essentially. I don't know if he has like maybe a couple lines at the end, but most part they cut to him and he's just kind of looking over to somebody or looking weird, looking worried, whatever. So there are things, of course, that I don't like about The Thin Red Line, but ultimately I think this is a great movie, and I can understand not liking it. I was surprised how many people in this chat and in on Discord that don't like it. I'm really surprised at the number of people, but I'll be the guy, for a lack of a better word, to take the bullet and tell you that I loved this.
I will start my thoughts on this movie with a direct public apology to Terrence Malick. I have preconceived ideas of, why I dislike Malick's movies. And it was just a few years ago. Did you see A Hidden Life? Did you see his movie, A Hidden Life?
I didn't see that, no.
I loved A Hidden Life. And it's not like that movie is much different in the way that it handles lingering shots of nature and narrative ponderings. And, it's a 3-hour movie that could have been a 2-hour movie probably. And it's one of the reasons I was excited to go back and revisit this. And Chris, you're not alone. I think this movie is amazing.
Okay, great. I was a little worried you fooled us all with your synopsis there, because I thought, yep, you just pretty much don't like it.
I purposefully wrote that synopsis with my younger eyes. So that synopsis is how I felt watching this movie the first time I watched it. I felt like it was overly ponderous. I felt like it went on too long. I felt like it should have ended at the 90-minute mark. A lot of that comes from preconceived ideas of what a war movie is, what it's supposed to do. Saving Private Ryan being right there as direct comparison does not help that mindset at all, because Saving Private Ryan is the kind of war movie that I envision, being interested in. But this movie is so much more interested in the ideas, in the depth of processing war, than it is in the actual mechanics of war. Now, that's not to say that the mechanics aren't there. In that final few feet of storming that hill, as I mentioned in the synopsis, is just absolutely astonishing. The geography is perfect. You know what's going on. You're aware of the places they need to go and what they need to do. It's just stunning work. And you mentioned the shot of coming up the hill. I agree, is absolutely beautiful. And there's this little note of a cut to a gun in a bunker at the top of this hill, from almost from the POV of the Japanese soldiers who are in the bunker. And it's subtle, and it's not, in any way didactic or in your face. It's just like, at the top of this hill, there are guns. And I think there's narration even that makes an allusion to that in that moment, and you just get a sense of how incredibly difficult this task is going to be and the lives that it's going to cost. And there is I forget who said it. I should look it up, but there's a famous saying. Somebody said that every war movie is a pro-war movie. It doesn't matter how hard you try. It glorifies the idea of the bravery and sacrifice and those kind of things. This movie, in my opinion, gets the closest to taking an honest, naked look at all the complexities of war. And like you said, the point of this movie seems to be about how the people who have nothing, the people and the nature, which is a Malick thing, that have nothing to do with this, are the ones, who are the suffering onlookers. And I was just tuned into it in a way that I wasn't before. I really, really liked some of the beautiful things that were being talked about in the narration. I think it is wild that Adrian Brody went to this premiere thinking he was the star of this movie, watched the movie, and in watching the movie realized he'd been entirely cut out of it, basically. Like, I cannot imagine the ego bruising involved in something like that.
No kidding.
To pour your heart, to know you shot all these scenes and moments and, and then just get completely cut out, even though your character is technically the main character in the book. Man, I cannot imagine being Adrian Brody in that moment.
I know.
It's wild to me. Some of the trivia on this is really interesting. Everybody wanted to be in this movie, apparently. Another person who got kind of cut out, Billy Bob Thornton, originally did all the narration for this movie, and then they just had the characters re-record it and redo it. So I thought that was interesting. Other people that got left on the cutting room floor that were in this movie originally. By the way, there was a 5-hour assembly cut of Legend that I would love to see appear somewhere. That would be
probably
interesting.
a lot of more Adrian Brody in that one.
Probably. Bill Pullman, Gary Oldman, Lucas Haas, Viggo Mortensen, Martin Sheen, Jason Patrick, and Mickey Rourke. All in this movie, but cut out, according to the trivia that I found. Another thing that I really found interesting that I wanted to talk a little bit about you. It's one of the scenes that I'm not sure I fully understand what we're going for. This is the final sacrifice scene. And I'm trying to figure out why Caviezel wants to be killed. Because he clearly could have put his gun down and, gone to a war camp. And maybe that's it. Maybe he just didn't want to go, to be a prisoner of war. And maybe that's what they're taught too. I don't know. The movie doesn't really delve in too much to that. But the Japanese soldier who shoots him at the end, the translation of what that soldier was saying was, "Surrender. It's you who killed my friends, but I have no desire to kill you. You're surrounded. Please surrender." And the empathy and life that gives to the Japanese forces as well, to say they're in the same boat as us in so many ways.
Something this movie does a great job of, by the way, is it starts off like, okay, they're the enemy, and then you realize that they're not. Really, they exactly what you're saying. They're going through the same things the Americans are going through throughout the whole thing.
I think it's worth mentioning that there's one female role in the entire movie, and the role is to dump the guy who has gone to war. It's not a good look, but
not exactly the Notebook, is it?
No, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really surprised on this rewatch that my eyes from 26 years ago or what. I shouldn't be surprised. We all change. We all evolve. But I think I was much more of a populist film goer, a quarter of a century ago, than I am now. And that's fine. And it's also fine if you don't like this movie, if you still feel that way, if you still feel like, oh, it's too slow for me or too long for me or whatever, that's okay. There are other movies that you're going to enjoy. And, but I would say if for someone like me, as I was willing to give it another chance, I really fell in love with what this movie was saying, what it was doing in the filmmaking around it. And I genuinely feel like I now owe Tree of Life a second watch. I now owe, any of this Malick stuff another go around, because I just think I had a little bit of prejudice kind of against his style. And man, this is beautiful. And not just the cinematography, which, by the way, I looked up John Toll, and he did not disappear. He's been working. It's wild what he's been working on. He's 72 now.
Oh, wow.
And he did Cameron Crowe stuff for a while. Like, he did Almost Famous, Vanilla Sky, and Elizabethtown, which are all Cameron Crowe. Then he did Gone Baby Gone for Ben Affleck. He did Tropic Thunder for Ben Stiller. Like, how amazing is this? Like, so, and then he got hooked up with the Wachowskis. He did Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, Matrix Resurrections, and then his latest, he apparently did 80 for Brady. So he's still working at 72.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because that guy, much like Roger Deakins, was like one of those well-known cinematographers. Like, when you saw his name, it meant you were watching. I think he did Legends of the Fall. Legends of the Fall was the first Oscar, I believe.
Yeah, he won for Legends of the Fall and Braveheart. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a point there where it was just like, man, he was on everything that was like a big Oscar thing. But anyway, this movie is beautiful. I was wondering about that self-sacrifice thing at the end too, and it's possible that he's still just trying. He doesn't understand the Japanese. He doesn't the other part of it is, maybe he's so scared to do anything in that moment that would like get them back on the right track, that he's still wasting time. Maybe, I don't know. But ultimately, in a movie like this, I think it's just like he just gave himself up. He's done. He like you said, he might be going to a war camp with no idea of where he's going to be going after that. And I feel like he's fallen in love with that woman on the island that he was taking off. He's fallen in love with her. He keeps on referring back to her, and like, he'll never know that kind of joy again. So he's just kind of like, I'm reserved to just, whatever happens to me at the end. It is a nice, like, little scene that doesn't give you everything, that you can kind of, everybody can interpret it a different way, I think. And I agree. He could have easily just dropped his weapon and just gone to prison, but again, maybe he just didn't want to do that at that point. So
yeah, I was trying to connect it to his arc. The arc was, because the movie is really Caviezel's movie. If you're going to pick one of the characters, we start with him, we end with, well, we don't end with him, but we, follow his complete arc. And I was trying to figure out if the change in that character relates to that decision in some way, and I just couldn't put it together. And so yeah, it was a little bit confusing to me. And honestly, again, the criticisms of the movie are valid, in my opinion, of all the narration going on, being a longer movie than that. Like, all that stuff is valid. I think the difference is when you give yourself to it in some ways, you almost treasure the extra-ness of it. You're almost like, I'm fine with narration here because I love the poetic nature of it, and I want to hear the new way you're putting word to the consequences and consideration of violence. So I just, it's a different perspective, and I think that can change everything.
Right. One other thing to get to, James in the chat said that he thought he heard me say that I watched A Hidden Life, and then I went to the IMDb and I realized that yes, I have watched The Hidden Life. There's something that you'll know about me is that there'll be times people mention a movie and I've totally forgotten the title of it, and I'll be like, nah, I didn't see that. And then, like, Singing in the Rain, I had seen Singing in the Rain, and then, like, I don't know, somebody said, you need to watch that. And I'm like, you're right. And I watched it again and I was like, oh yeah, I remember all this.
Oh yeah, I remember this movie.
yeah, I saw this. So yeah, that happens, especially when it's a movie like that was like, like this is an Oscar contender. We're gonna dump it in at the end of the year, and then you have to like watch it in the middle of like 5 other movies that you're trying to watch to get to the
Oh,
end of
I
the year.
know. Yeah.
So anyway, I have seen that movie. On to the super secret double feature.
Be very, very quiet.
Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
What do you got?
So I think that there are movies that I could come up with that are not war, that could fit some of the themes of this movie, but the one that aside from like Saving Private Ryan is such a good super secret double feature.
Sure.
It's not going to be my pick, mainly because, and you had mentioned, you had alluded to the every war movie is a pro-war movie, even if they try to do an anti-war movie. And I think I was even thinking of a movie like A Bridge Too Far, which I think the person who wrote the book said something like he loved everything about the movie except there was one change that they made to a character's dialogue at the end that made it feel like he was pro-war, and when the whole thing was anti-war and everything. And the thing about Saving Private Ryan is that it's as a roller coaster. It's a rock and roller action movie, man. It's like, woo, this is the best. War ain't it grand, And it's like, yeah, save one man, sacrifice a whole bunch of people to save one man because of all of his brothers. Yeah,
War. What is it good for? Absolutely everything.
Exactly. And it feels like a perfect counterpoint double feature to this movie. And of course, I love Saving Private Ryan too. There's a lot of ways to look at war, obviously. But though I was trying to think of some non-war movies, some sort of out of the box movies, and I just ultimately came up with another war movie, and it's Paths of Glory, the Stanley Kubrick movie from 1957. The movie has a lot of the same kind of thoughts about sending men to certain death that this one does. Although I think this was based on a real incident. Kirk Douglas is in the movie. Of course, it's a lot of like American actors playing French soldiers, and it's kind of weird.
Sure.
But it's about how these French soldiers were told to attack a German bunker, and the people in charge said, no, all we're going to do is just die. So why run in there? But the people who were sitting in the boardrooms and everything are just like, no, do it. And then after they didn't do it, they are sent to trial for not doing it. And it's like, how do you defend that? They obviously didn't follow orders, so they're guilty of it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I was going to send them out, but they're just going to get torn to pieces. So what's the point? So that was sort of what kept going through my head, because the main part of this movie is about how Nolte is forcing Cateus to try to go. Now he's a little bit cooler about it. Really. I mean, he doesn't like try to court-martial Cateus. He does as much as he does almost everything but court-martial him by the end. But that one was going through my head throughout the whole thing, was Paths of Glory, and how that paralleled what's going on with Nolte and Cateus in this. And in this case, Cateus said no, and he held the line. I thought that was, by the way, that was another fun thing to notice in this movie. And this is life as much as life gets. Nolte comes up the hill, and they're sitting there, and they're tired, and they're just kind of like doing nothing. And he goes, okay, so why didn't you do the thing that I told you to do? It's obviously you could do it. And he's like, the situation has changed since the last 5 minutes that I talked to you. And of course that sounds like total bullshit to a guy like Nolte. It's such a life thing, a life lesson in that moment, that, you can be doing all the right things, and then somebody else comes up in the situation and is like, why didn't you do this? Anyway, Paths of Glory will be my super secret double feature to this movie. On to the homework for next week, and I'm going to continue this movies that I did not like that I have been recommended, and I have watched this movie many times over the years. I don't know which which version of it to give you guys, but I'm going to say Blade Runner, the theatrical cut, is the one that I want to watch. I'm going to probably end up watching the director's cut or whatever cut it is that people say is the best to compare these two movies. I'm not telling you guys to do that, but I'm probably going to end up watching both just so that I can have both of these. I think there's like 5 versions of this movie.
There's so many versions of Blade Runner. Yeah.
So the Blade Runner is probably is going to be one of the most controversial choices of this series because I think a lot of people love Blade Runner. But over the years, I've been told how brilliant it is, and every time I watch it, I feel like it falls flat a little bit. So we're going to give this another whirl, and we're gonna see how it plays now. That it's been quite some time since I last watched it, and I think I saw Blade Runner 2049. I think was the last time maybe I saw the first Blade Runner. So it's been that many years. So I'm going to take a look at this again. But yes, I'm going to go with the theatrical cut. And if you guys want to do the theatrical cut, that's how I'm going to be basing all of my notes on. I will probably end up watching the director's cut and kind of give an idea of whether that version is worth it over that one. So anyway, that's how we would do it.
The United States theatrical cut, as one of the versions, is an international theatrical cut. Just to,
of course.
Just to clarify,
maybe it doesn't matter which cut you guys watch. Just
it probably doesn't.
Just watch one of the cuts, and then you tell me. I'll tell you which one I watched, and then you can tell me, oh, well, you should try to watch this because it's blah 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 or whatever. So I don't know.
It is wild. There are seven different versions of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, and the latest is the 2007 final cut that he had total control over. So that's why people, tend to espouse that one, is because it's like, this is what Ridley Scott wanted. And it's like, well, yeah. Well, if every director got the chance to do exactly what they wanted, we'd live in a different world. So,
and I'm finding out that almost every movie has a what Ridley Scott wanted version that comes out afterwards.
Right.
It's kind of like Kingdom of Heaven. Great movie when Ridley Scott is allowed to, to do what he wants. Not such a great movie when it's not. But I'm sure that there's a good an equal contrast between ones that work and ones that don't. Yes.
I will also say, just because I looked it up, it is Francis Truffaut who said every war movie ends up being pro-war, and it was in the 70s. Francois Truffaut in the 70s said that. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, there you go. All right. That's going to do it for this week. Once again, chat, thanks for coming out. I know that a lot of you did not like Thin Red Line. I am very happy that it got turned around for Aaron on this. That's the whole point. I'm kind of hoping to love everything that I end up watching. So yeah, I'm hoping to love Blade Runner when I get around to watching it again. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
Hello. Is that Mrs. Doubtfire? That's Mrs. Doubtfire, right?
Which one?
Hello.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about posters. I was like, I don't know why. I was not focusing on you going hello.
Right. Right. Yes. Is that Eye of Jim Caviezel behind you on the poster for Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yes, it is.
It's amazing. What a weird choice by them.
Very, very weird. They haven't recovered since. I wrote actor names and not character names on my notes, and I'm gonna feel weird going through. Sean Penn did this, and Jim Caviezel did that, and
Well, you're gonna hate my summary then.
oh well, no, I'm not gonna hate it at all. I just think after you establish what the characters' names are in your, I don't know if you want. Are you going to do that?
I don't. I genuinely don't pay much attention to that, but yeah, I think actually I do start with their character names. Yeah, I think Private Wit, which is the Caviezel character, is in there. I don't know. I don't think the ones that I feel like I mentioned. Nope. It's mostly just actor names. I was checking out Discord and I was checking out Reddit. There was an interesting post on Reddit recently about Recotopia. I don't know if you saw that one. It was one of the most, and we don't have to talk about the specifics of the post, but it was one of the most like constructive criticism type posts I've ever seen on Reddit. Like, it's just not the type of thing people usually do on the internet. Like, it was full of like love and praise for who we are and what we do. And then it was like, in this one part, I don't really like this thing that you're doing or whatever. But it was more like, I don't know, it was just really well written and it was very thoughtful. And I just thought, if more people would learn how to take the things they're processing and put them through the lens of empathy as they talk to the person they're talking to, I feel like, we'd all be better off. But the internet just rewards like sharp, attacks and those kind of things. So
what is it? What are the things that they didn't like?
Well, one of the things that, and part of this is me because it's I just don't know any other way to do it. But one of the things they are growing tired of is the summaries, the jokey summaries. And I just I don't know how to just do a Wikipedia summary. Like, I'm just gonna watch the movie and jot down my notes and go through it. That's just what my brain does. But
it's also, doesn't the normal version of that become tiresome too?
I think it might. Yeah, I think it might. And honestly, there were also, some feedback to the feedback about people saying, "Oh no, I love that part. Like, that's, one of my favorite things." Somebody even said they want like some sort of separate YouTube recording of just the summaries or something like that. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And everybody's different, but that's also what makes the constructive criticism so valuable, is it allows for actual dialogue as opposed to just fighting, is just be like, you're wrong, downvote,
But yes, I do prefer that kind of criticism other than the just like, I don't know, the out of nowhere hatred version of that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish other than, I guess you're trying to be, popular on the internet or whatever but I don't know.
It was interesting. But yeah, I appreciated it, and I made a little note to them that I appreciate it. Jeremy actually responded to them as well and said that he appreciated their thoughtfulness and that we continue to, figure out what Recotopia is and continue to grow and evolve. And, their other thing was they liked the longer podcasts, and now we're just an hour. And so they were, and so Jeremy, I think, replied like, that's a purposeful thing. Like, we wanted this podcast to be an hour, and, to respect the time of, all our full-time employees who have so many other things to do. Once you start doubling that time, you also double the edit time, you double, so there's like a real incentive for us to be able to do, hour-long podcasts as opposed to 2.5-hour podcasts. So,
yeah. I don't know what the benefit of the longer podcast is, or really, honestly. We filled our other podcast full of a lot of things. This is a recommend podcast, so it's not, we could make it anything we want to, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I think for, as a podcast listener, I think the main thing that a longer podcast does for a fan is like, I get more hangout time with my podcast buddies. That's really it. I just get, and we kind of do that with our outtakes though. You know what I mean? Like we have a little extra time to hang out at the end, with you and talk about, weird stuff and, whatever's going on in our world. But yeah, there really isn't. And in fact, I have some longer podcasts I listen to, and sometimes I'm like, I kind of wish you would keep this to an hour.
Yeah. And sometimes I would, when I was really into podcasts and and I can't remember why, not because I didn't like them or anything. It's just that I think it was because I had more time, whatever, to listen to a lot of stuff. I don't know where that time went. I think I just transferred it to other things. But when I would listen to them and they'd be 2 hours, I'd be like, this is like an hour of solid good content. And then they'd go on to some sort of game or something like that, and the game was not interesting to me, and I would just be like,
yeah,
can do without this.
Yeah.
And then and it's like, well, I'm glad you guys seemed like you were having fun with it. You're laughing and you're doing it, but then over my headphones, it's not doing it for me.
Like when we interact with content we love, and we all have this, is to remember all the different perspectives and all the different desires and purposes that this content fulfills for people, right? Like for the people who are creating the content, it fulfills a purpose. For the people who are listening, it fulfills a purpose. And those purposes can be completely different, even within the team that's creating it, even with the viewers or listeners who are listening to it. And so, again, that's why, patience and understanding and actual real dialogue are so important, because you can go, oh, this thing that I find annoying, a lot of people actually like, or this thing that I really like, some people find annoying. Like that's,
it's so, that's the thing, right? It's so tough to parse out what one person's opinion is compared to a whole bunch of other people's.
Right.
And like, I'll see like screeds on Twitter about a movie of like just people just, oh boy, they hate this, and then you go to the IMDb and it's like 8.2.
I got my very first dash cam. Ordered my very first dash cam. I haven't installed it yet, but I'm already super excited because it just seems like such a great protection to have. Like it's just, we recently went through something where my wife got rear-ended and the person lied about it, and so we had to cover it all ourselves and blah blah blah. And I was like, if we had a dash cam, we just send that to their insurance company and they're like, well, got us, we'll pay for it.
Exactly. It is a good idea. I feel like I need to get one of those too, because I feel like that's just right around the corner for me. Somebody just rear-ending me, because it's amazing to me how many people, they have a full lane. I've talked about this before. They have a full lane to get over and pass you, but they will wait until they get all the way up. Like they may not be as close as I'm imagining they are, because it looks like they're on my bumper a lot of times, but they're getting enough close that I at least am alarmed that they've gotten that close. And then they pull over, and it's like, dude, you had a whole lane that you went. At what point were you convinced that I was not going to go as fast as you thought I was going? So like, man.
Yeah, it's something, and that's the reason, like this, what I've been telling people, since this happened to us, is like, don't wait till after it happens to get it, because that's annoying. Just go ahead and get one, and they're not super duper expensive. The one I got was just a couple $100, but it has a 3-camera system where it's shooting outside the front windshield into the interior, and then there's a camera you hook on the back windshield as well that shoots behind. And, you throw a 512 gigabyte micro SD card in there, it records for 27 hours on a loop. And it also has like impact awareness. So if something happens, it immediately saves all that video into a separate folder where it won't be recorded over if you keep recording.
Nice.
So like, yeah, they're really, like, the technology on them is really cool. So, yeah, and the wiring maybe can be a little intimidating to people, but honestly, you've got weather stripping around most of your doors that cords tuck into really nicely, and so it's not that hard to do. So I'm a bit frustrated that as a technology person, I didn't do this sooner. Like I should have done this 5 years ago, but I just never did. I'm going to take a trip to make a deposit at the bank today, but I'm going to get my dash cam set up first.
That's right. That's right.
And if I have a weird interaction with the bank teller, I'm putting that on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.